You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Are you ready to learn the 3 secrets to launching a successful podcast? Hi, I'm Bill, a recent client of the Podcast Mogul. If you've been thinking about starting a podcast but aren't sure where to begin, he's got you covered. He is hosting a free webinar where he will share the 3 secrets that can help you launch, grow, and monetize your podcast without any fancy equipment or technical headaches. Click the link in the show notes to save your spot now and let him help get your podcast off the ground.
Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Join the podcast mogul Phil Better as he interviews successful entrepreneurs that make their living in the digital world. Now, let's join your host, Phil Better, and his special guest today on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast.
Gentlemen, welcome back to Invest in Yourself, the podcast series. I am, of course, your host with the most, Phil Better. And today I am excited to have our amazing guest, Rachel Oswalt, who is the host of Your Story Doesn't End Here, a military mental health podcast. Rachel, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I love how you muted yourself while I was doing all that. I was like, did she forget? And I'm over here thinking, it's like, no, the guest has requested the mute. I'm like, okay, let's see what's going on here, Rachel. So thank you for that. Obviously, you're a podcaster, so you know how all the fun stuff, intros and all that. So can you just introduce yourself to my audience so they get to know you a bit better?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Rachel, born and raised in the Midwest, transplant to the Pacific Northwest, where I have lived now since 2015. The military is what brought me out to the Pacific Northwest. And when I separated from the military in 2021, my family decided to stay out here. So launched my podcast, Your Story Doesn't End Here, at the end of 2021, a few months after I separated from the military. And I really started advocating for military mental health while I was still active duty, but continue to do it to this day. And, you know, we can get into more specifics about that, but I'm incredibly passionate about what I do. It's one of those needed and necessary conversations that a lot of people don't want to talk about. So I absolutely love it and don't plan to stop anytime soon.
Good. We need more of that because it's a huge thing from having friends in the military, veterans, and still active duty about all the fun stuff you guys get to have and deal with. And I use the term fun, both ironically and truthfully, because you guys get to do some fun stuff. Like blow up big things.
Yeah.
But also you have to deal with a whole bunch of other stuff that's not too much fun. When did you become aware that you wanted to start a podcast specifically?
So, you know, I toyed around with the idea of YouTube for a few years. I wasn't a huge podcast listener myself. I knew they existed. I really didn't know what they were for a long time. And self-admittedly, even to this day, I'm not like the world's biggest podcast listener. I have a few personal development ones, some other educational ones. I've tried the true crime. I don't have the time to dedicate to listening to full episodes a lot of the time. So, podcasting wasn't really on my mental for a long time. I have a friend who has one of the top 10% personal development podcasts in Australia. And he started this podcast course teaching people how to launch and scale their podcast as well, right around the time that I launched mine. And so that's when I started toying with the idea of, oh, well, it's not as difficult as I thought it would be. It's a lot easier than trying to launch a YouTube channel. I don't have to deal with all the video editing and all the stuff that comes with YouTube. So I said, you know what, why not? And I really just started before I was ready. I kind of pitched the idea out there to a few people to try to get some stories together. a lot of people were all about it. They were really excited. And so, I recorded a few episodes and then I just launched. I created my own artwork on Canva. Had no idea what I was doing outside of that short course that I took. And it did not scale to the top 10% of the US. I think it's a little harder in the US than it is in Australia.
Lightly harder.
Scale like that, different countries. But I really, really enjoyed it. And it's impacted so many lives so far.
So first of all, I love that it was a friend who inspired you with their podcast for you to jump into it, and I'm looking forward to learning more about that person after the episode because I want to focus this on you. What was it that was there a specific moment that you were like, I want to do it on mental health, or was it like from the moment you said, hey, I'm going to do a podcast, it was mental health?
From the moment I decided on the podcast, it was mental health. The mental health idea came before the podcast idea.
Okay.
I really decided that mental health was something that I wanted to advocate for when I was active duty because of the challenges that I experienced myself, losing a few friends to suicide when I was active duty that were also in the military, and then also seeing the ways that people active duty continue to struggle because there are so many barriers to entry to getting help. So I knew that I had this message and this message that I wanted to put out to the world. It was just figuring out what's going to be the best platform to put it out there, and podcasting just fit that mold perfectly.
With your launch of your podcast, you said it didn't blow up as you thought it was, and normally that's how most people feel when they first started. But you still stuck with it. What was the reason you stuck with it, even though you didn't get that success that was not promised but kind of alluded to?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it has to go back to the reason why, and it being a true passion of mine. There's not a lot of things in life that I think people are truly, truly passionate about. I think a lot of people throw that word passion around very loosely, and they say, I started this business, I'm passionate about this. But I think when you're truly passionate about something, you just know in your body, you feel it in your core. And when you talk about it, you can just talk very passionately about it because it is your true passion. And military mental health is one of those things for me. And so why I kept going is because I knew the impact that my podcast was making, even if it was just on a handful of people. I probably have 40 listeners every week that tune in. But you know what? Those 40 people tune in every single week. And a lot of podcasters quit after the first 2 weeks, I think the statistics are. I think a lot of people don't make it past 5 episodes. I've consistently been putting out an episode every single week, every single Monday at 5 a.m. Eastern since I launched my podcast, because I know that there are people out there that are relying on me to put out that episode. There are people who get value from me putting out that episode. And, people listen to it on their way to work in the morning, and people really relate to the messages that I'm putting out there. And knowing that it's bigger than me is what drives me to continue going on every week. And I won't say it's been easy. I mean, there's been maybe one or two times where there were technical difficulties and I couldn't put an episode out right on time. It was a few hours or a day late. There was a time when I ran out of episodes, so I had to repurpose an episode. I mean, I've had to get creative with this, right? But I always constantly every week put out an episode for my listeners because I know that this is so much of a bigger mission than me.
I love that. I love how you're always going back to your listener. Like, it's not about you, it's about your listener, being there for your listener. And I think that's probably the reason why I just took a look here on one of my favorite websites, Listen Notes, that you're now a top 5% podcaster. Yeah. Like, you got past the top 10, you're in the top 5 right now, which is a really hard thing to do, especially for any podcaster. So very hats off to that. Hats off to you to show
Thank you.
Your consistency, but also your willingness to be there for your audience is paying dividends by you growing so high. Have you done? What is it that you want to accomplish? Like, what's something, like a goal you have with your podcast that you would love to be able to accomplish?
So, one of the biggest missions that I have on my podcast is to change the culture of mental health in the military. And that would have truly be the ultimate goal, is to change the entire culture. Now for a while I was focusing on what can we teach the people in the Pentagon and the people in the US government to change things. But then when I really scaled back in my mind and thought, what is policy change truly going to do? Well, policy change is probably going to bring a PowerPoint presentation to a base that, we might get 50 people in a room and they're probably going to fall asleep while someone's clicking through that PowerPoint, and everyone's just going to go about their business and nothing's going to truly change. And so it was end of 2022 when I started really thinking, okay, what can I do to use this as a vehicle to truly make a difference? And that idea of changing the culture is what popped in my mind. And so what I really envision is I thought this since the beginning, that if the civilian population knew just how bad mental health was in the military, I feel like they would be outraged. Now, just on the base that I live next to, there's probably 8 to 12 suicides a year that come out of that base, but no one's talking about it. So, the more we can talk about these things, yes, that awareness piece, it is a very important piece. And you'll hear stories on my podcast of the amount of women that experience sexual assault in the military. Most of them have. People that have had, attempted murder on military bases that no one knew about because they didn't feel empowered to speak up about it. I mean, these things are happening all the time. People just aren't talking about it. So that's one piece, so that awareness piece. But to be able to give the tools to these members of the military to say, hey, you might not know how to be a good leader because no one taught you, because, a lot of people don't know this. They don't really teach leadership in the military, at least out in the Navy. Yeah. But here's a tool that I can give you through a guest, or here's a story that I can share with you from someone who experienced something, so you can take it and you can go back and you can be part of that change. And I do have people that have told me, like, hey, I listened to your podcast because I want to be better. I want to be a better leader. And a lot of people just don't know. So a lot of it is very much educational. And my ultimate goal would be, yes, to change that culture in the military so it is a better place and a safer place for those who are serving.
Well, I think you're already doing that just by starting this podcast and already hearing people telling you that they want to be a better leader for that. So I think you're already influencing the next generation of leaders.
Thank you.
So congratulations on that. Did you think you would get this far with your podcast?
When I started, and this is probably one of the main reasons that I was able to keep going, because I very much get in my head about a lot of things. I didn't really think to the future with like this massive goal of, am I going to be able to make it 2 years? Am I going to be able to make it to this point? I just took it one episode at a time, and I still do that. And it's like the one area in my life where I can consistently just take things one step at a time and be okay with that. And it's not overwhelming to me. And I've really never had issues getting guests just from reaching out to people and telling them what the mission is. And so, I never thought of it in the beginning of like, oh, I wonder where I'm going to be a year and a half or 2 years from now. I just kind of started it and was like, well, I guess we'll just see what happens. And we'll just kind of take it day by day.
And I want to touch on you getting guests, because your podcast is obviously directed to the military members, past, present, and future, obviously, because we're trying to educate the future members so that they can watch out for some of these signs and help create the change that you're looking for a more positive military. Sorry, brain just blanked there. Society and community and culture. That's the word I was looking for, culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I just lost my train of thought. Hold on. Have you gotten any positive feedbacks, like from members that you didn't think would be listening to your podcast?
A lot of the feedback that I get is from people who are in that military and veteran space. I don't know that anyone that's reached out to me is outside of the military and veteran space. And I will caveat this with, I really don't market my podcast a ton. My podcast has been fully funded by myself since the beginning. I did all the work myself in the beginning. I now have an editor, so I'm outsourcing that, but I pay for everything out of pocket. I don't actually make a dime off of my podcast. And so it makes it very difficult from a marketing and a scaling standpoint to be able to really build the audience. And so that's kind of where my challenge lies right now with getting the message and the word out there. Is everything is 100% organic. So on the plus side, I know that the people that I am reaching, that is 100% organic. And I know that the message is getting to who the message needs to get to. But to be able to hit those goals and scale, then I understand that there's a next step to that. And so I am at a point now where I'm looking at, or I'm applying for different grants to be able to get the word out there. I'm looking to expand from just a podcast to a public speaking platform, and to be able to use the rest of this year and then into 2024 to scale more so I can reach other people.
I love that. I love that you're already planning on the next mission, if you will, for the podcast. Do you see podcasting becoming a bigger trend in the military, since you guys do, you're overseas, you're deployed, you don't always have access to YouTube and all that. Do you see maybe podcasting springing up and more military people using it?
Yeah, the world of podcasting has grown so much in the last few years. I mean, if you look at when it first started, I mean, obviously the people that are benefiting the most right now, like your Joe Rogans, are the people who started back when it wasn't popular, right? And when I launched my podcast, my friend who had started that podcasting course was talking about the projections of podcasting. And I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but the projections, if you look at them online, are just insane from like a global standpoint for how much podcasting is growing. More advertisers are starting to use podcasts because they know that it's growing and that there's so many creators out there that are using podcasting as a platform. I do know several members of the military who listen to podcasts, and you're right, when you're talking about someone that's overseas and maybe video streaming doesn't work the greatest, and you need something. I mean, there's a lot of time, like when I was on a detachment in Bahrain, there's a lot of time to work out. And when you're working out, if you're like me, sometimes you pop on a podcast. And so I definitely see it growing. I think that other entities like the military is using podcasting even as platforms for themselves. I know someone in the National Guard who her unit has like a specific podcast for their unit. And so I do see it growing immensely, and hopefully a lot more positive ones out there. There's some interesting ones, and I will say that there's some that I've listened to, and I'm like, oh,
yeah, I can feel you there. The world of podcasting. We're currently sitting, I think, 4 million podcasts and counting. The last time I checked with my good friend Alex San Filipino of Podmatch and Pod Pros and all these amazing outfits that he runs. But yeah, I love that you have this positive outlook towards it, as well as mentioning that someone in the military or the National Guard is using podcasting to keep a track with their troops and their unit and that. I want to go back in, and I want to help some people who are listening. Maybe we get a couple of military people, because I do have those military people in my friends and families. If they wanted to start a podcast, we're going to go everything you've learned since you launched. We want to pass on that knowledge. What's maybe 1 or 2 pieces of advice you would have for them?
I would say have a plan, but the most important part is the action step, because you can plan all day, but until you take action, you're not going to learn. And I go back and I listen at some of my earlier episodes, and it's a little cringy to me now because of where I'm at now. I'm like, ugh. I mean, I did my own editing at the beginning. I used Alitu, ALITU, that website, to do all my own editing. It was like $30 a month, but I did it and I just got started, and the impact still existed because I was still getting the message out there. So if I was to give any piece of advice to anyone wanting to start a podcast, you can create your own artwork. You can do your own editing. You don't even have to. There's some people that don't even do editing. They just put the raw conversation out there, because the idea is, what message are you trying to get across, and who are you impacting by getting that message across? And by not getting your message out there, you are not impacting those lives. So you're doing a disservice to people by not getting that message out there. So, obviously there's different podcast topics. Some people are more on the lighthearted comedy side. Some people are on the dark humor or true crime side. Some people are putting positive messages out to the world. Whatever it is, I'd say just do it. Figure out what your plan is and just do it. And if it doesn't work and you have to optimize and try something else, that's okay. There's so much of a fear of failure in the world. And I think a lot of us were brought up with that, especially the school system. It really trains us to be afraid of failure, and to unlearn that by just taking action and learning and understanding that You might not get it right the first time. You might have to try 2 or 3 more times. That's okay. There's people out there with podcasts that are in the top 1% that it might be their second or third podcast because maybe the first 2 just didn't align with their mission anymore or it didn't work. It happens. But a piece of advice that I would give, just do it.
I love it. And it's a great piece of advice. And I love that you went a bit deeper in and saying like, hey, you just like with the raw audio, just upload it without anything, just get it done. And then you can improve as you go. And I love that improving as you go. Would you consider doing more podcasts, like another type of podcast? Or are you fully like 100% this is your baby and nothing else is going to change that?
I've considered it before. The reason that I haven't is because I have a million and two things going on in my life right now. It's, my husband and I, we have some multiple businesses. I have an 18-month-old daughter. And my goals in my life, I would say there's a huge chunk where I am working towards the military mental health piece. I'm actually in the midst of organizing and hosting an event this upcoming September in my local community to be able to establish a military mental health reintegration and leadership center in my community to help the military and veterans in my local area. And so there's that piece, but I'm really working towards getting to a point where I'm living off of passive income and not adding a bunch of extra stuff to my plate. So I constantly have to tell myself no to all the millions of business ideas that pop in my head all the time. And yes, I would love to start another podcast, but I probably don't have the capacity for it right now. Maybe in the future.
I can understand. Maybe when you free up some more of your time from all the other million things that you're doing.
Yeah.
Who is your ideal listener, and how did you come up with the idea of your ideal listener?
I don't think I ever really sat down and said, this is the idea of my ideal listener. It might have been somewhere in that course of where I was doing that podcasting course. But like I said, I already knew exactly what I wanted to do before I launched the podcast. So I kind of probably went a little backwards than what a lot of other people teach. A lot of people are like helping you come up with your idea and your ideal audience and, all that. I would like my ideal audience to be people who are not aware, people who are civilians who would be able to speak out about these topics, but understanding that the military is such a unique environment that usually the only people that can understand fully are people who've served in the military. So my ideal audience naturally ends up being other people who have served in the military, men, women who have gone through mental health challenges in the military and can really relate to it. That's where a lot of my audience and probably the bulk lies, is people that can truly relate and they feel like, oh, wow, I'm not alone.
Okay. How do you get your guests?
I do a lot of networking, reaching out to people. LinkedIn is a huge source of guest sourcing and just meeting people. I've also found Instagram to be a platform where I've met quite a few people as well. I've had people refer other people to me. Podcastguests.com is a platform that I recently came across that has brought me a lot of people, a ton of people. And, I've had people reach out to me about being a guest because they listen or they have value to share. But usually I'll either reach out on like a Facebook group, Instagram, I'll search like a hashtag, or LinkedIn is a huge one. But there's so many people out there I found in the military mental health space, and, people that are willing to speak about their experiences. And I do give some of my guests the option to be anonymous on the podcast as well, so that they can share their story in a safe space without their name or their identity being out there. And so, finding people, it really usually isn't hard for me because there's so many people out there that are willing to speak up and share their story.
I love that. I love that you're using different methods of finding your guests, so you get this nice variety of guests and not just focusing on one place.
Yeah.
I'm going to mention a few other places when we go off the air so that you can find even more places for some awesome podcasting, sharing that knowledge. Rachel, one final question before we wrap up and you tell us where we can all listen to your amazing thing. Are you planning on monetizing your podcast?
I would love to monetize my podcast. For me, it's still figuring out the best way to do that. Everyone has their different methods of monetization. A lot of them go back to courses that are already created, and so that's something that I have to kind of go back to the drawing board and figure out what that would look like for me, because I would never want to just throw something together just for the purposes of making money. So yes, monetizing hopefully is in the future. Just so that I can support what I'm doing. And like I said, I can create more impact by growing. But right now it's just not happening. So, but within the next year, yes, that's the plan.
Awesome. I love it. Guys, we're talking with Rachel from Your Story Doesn't End Here podcast, a military mental health podcast, an amazing podcast I suggest you go all listen to. I'm going to jump off screen here for a short second and off the mic. Rachel, I want you to let my audience know where they can follow you fully so that they can be a part of your troop.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Your Story Doesn't End Here, or YSDEH. On Instagram, there's an underscore before YSDEH. My website is also www.ysdeh.com. And you can also search me on LinkedIn under my name, Rachel Oswalt.
Excellent. Rachel, I want to thank you so much for coming on to the show, sharing your story about your podcast, and of course, having a podcast focused on the mental health of our military veterans. Oh, just remembered one other question. Do you focus primarily on the U.S. military, or are you open to international guests?
I do focus primarily on U.S., but I actually this morning had a call with a UK military member. And so, I know that mental health affects military all over the world. I've also connected with Australian military members who have had stories as well. I have not had anyone on my podcast as of yet, but I do have a guest from the UK coming on very soon. So yes, we will be expanding globally, and I'm really excited for that.
Love hearing that. So that's good sign for my my listeners, if they are military veterans or no military veterans dealing with mental health or want to talk about their stories of mental health. Make sure you reach out to Rachel to have them on the show. Rachel, thank you again for coming on and sharing your story about your podcast. I'm looking forward to listening to more episodes of your show.
Thank you so much for having me, Phil. It's been a pleasure to come on and share my story, and I hope that people are impacted by this.
Oh, I know they definitely will be, because I was impacted, so you had one impact, so that's even better. For my audience, check out the show notes down below. Go support Rachel. Go support a fellow podcaster who's trying to change the culture in a very sometimes difficult place to change culture and get us to start using this more often. I want to thank you all for listening, and remember to always invest in yourself.
Thanks for tuning in. Now it's time to take the next step. When you're ready to dive deeper into how to launch, grow, and monetize your podcast, Phil's got something special for you. Join him for a free webinar where he'll reveal the 3 secrets that have helped countless entrepreneurs succeed in podcasting. Click the link in the show notes to save your spot, and let's turn your podcasting dreams into reality.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.